Welcome to Beyond the Stats for SPARS podcast. I am here today with Amanda Cox-Zupan, who is going to talk from a realtor perspective, and Lynn Violet, who is going to talk from a mortgage perspective. And I'm Jennifer Kovacic, the communications director here at SPAR, and it's great to have you both.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
A lot to talk about in statistics for the first part of the year, and specifically looking at July of 2024. We saw a shift in activity from first quarter to second quarter, going a little bit busier to slower. And as we're kicking off third quarter, it'll be interesting to see how this kind of wraps up after August and September. And lots of activity, lots of changes in our market. Mm-hmm. In July, we saw seller activity rise compared to last year when buyers pulled back a bit. Inventory was up 11.4% to 9,398 properties, and prices were higher. The median sales price increased to $385,000. The first quarter of 2024, as you may remember, started out a little bit busier than most years. We had a mild winter, and it seemed to keep people out and wanting to shop for homes a little bit more. And then it slowed down a little bit in the spring. And the second quarter of the year was also weaker. Homes were selling a little bit slower May, June, and July than they had a previous year back in 2023. So I'm curious to hear from both of you, what's your perspective? Was this consistent to what you saw?
I can honestly say that this year is very similar to what last year was. Obviously, in 2023, rates started to rise. So we started out very, very busy, as we usually do in the beginning of the year. Tax time comes around. A lot of people are preparing to find a way to spend that tax return money and maybe get a down payment for their home. So we tend to, from the lending side, become very, very busy right around February 1st and through, the early spring first quarter into second quarter, just qualifying people, getting people out ready to shop. Obviously, the seasons here in Minnesota are kind of cyclical with lending too, so we get very busy once the springtime rolls around. I can tell you also that one thing that was different, though, rates were about 0.5 to 3/4 of a point lower in 2023 than they were this year in 2024. So what was happening is the area median prices were increasing, as you mentioned, to $385. But a lot of first-time home buyers were qualifying for less and less because the rates being higher. So we had a lot of frustrated clients, a lot of frustrated first-time home buyers. We've also had, an upswing, I think, with a lot of applications with the First Generation program that also came out this summer here in June. So with July, lots and lots of applications. So
you're kind of making me wonder, are you seeing more first-time home buyers seek out different programs and just different creative ways?
Definitely, yes. The first-time homebuyer programs and down payment assistance programs, I think, are more popular now than they've ever been in my career of originating loans. So I would say, for me, probably 1 out of every 4 buyers is a first-time home buyer right now, wanting to seek out assistance.
Okay.
I agree with you, Lynn. I think we are so seasonally cyclical here in real estate that when the snow is on the ground, people don't want to come out of their houses. And when spring hits, the market just jumps into full swing. And I saw the market, we saw it in full swing by mid-February, early March this year, which is, usually it's much later. Usually we're looking at April to really see that kind of activity. So that was really interesting.
Well, looking specifically at July, pending sales were down 4.2%, but for the year they're up a percentage. And seller activity right now, or this summer, we saw rise modestly, although buyer activity seems to be a little bit more plateaued at the moment.
I agree with you.
We're seeing more inventory, even though and as you talked both about first-time home buyers, that's not necessarily helping them out so much because the affordability for them, the rates are a little bit higher than they're able to afford, coupled with the kinds of homes that they may be looking for and what's available. So it's definitely interesting and probably will be for some time. Today's snapshot shows that we're in a seller's market right now, although again, like everything, it varies by the area and the market segment, location, and all of that. How are each of you working with your respective clients and including just kind of counseling them on the right moves and what to do, what to watch for, and how to proceed?
Sure. I think with sellers, it still really is a seller's market, but it's a different type of seller's market. It's not the type of seller's market we were seeing in April and May and the beginning of June. So homes are taking a little bit longer to sell. We're still seeing those really beautiful shiny penny homes that are priced right go in multiple offers. But because inventory has risen a little bit, we're having to do a little bit more to get ready to sell. I mean, back in the spring and in the past few years in the spring and early summer market, it's just literally you put a sign in your front yard and the house is gone in multiples. And now it's really kind of counseling sellers like, yes, technically it's still a seller's market, but we have more competition now. So we have to make sure that we're doing those repairs, that we're giving it a fresh coat of paint, that we're staging, deep cleaning the house, doing a little bit of landscaping so that we can stay competitive to sell really quickly and have a better chance at being in that multiple offer situation. With buyers, I've been counseling them. We have a better shot. We're still, again, if you're looking for that perfect house, with no repairs, perfectly staged, move-in ready, yes, you may still be in that, multiple offer situation where you really have to be competitive. But if you're willing to accept a couple flaws or a couple repairs or maybe the fact that it needs some fresh paint, you have a better shot at getting it. We're seeing things sit on the market for, a couple weeks. We have a better shot at negotiating price and terms, which buyers haven't really had for a while. So,
Sure.
So I think that's kind of how I've been counseling them.
Yeah. So from a buying perspective, from a lending perspective, when people come to me, they're asking, should I be waiting? I'm getting a lot of those questions now with the impending election. The Feds have been talking about dropping the rates, and I think there's such a misconception on how when the Feds drop the rate and how that affects the mortgage-backed securities, that people think they correlate together and they really don't. I think rates obviously are going to drop because historically they do in an election year. But right now I'm telling everyone, keep going. Right now is probably the best time for you to be getting prepared to get pre-approved, get your file in. We have the ability to do that upfront underwrite, which also helps in multiple offer situations. The one thing also that I've noticed recently is that we are seeing a few files coming through now with sellers getting their closing cost covered again, only on those homes that have been on the market for 1 to 2 weeks. If you go in and ask for seller pays first day on the market, you're probably going to have them give you resistance. The sellers are going to probably say, we're going to wait for another offer or reject the offer altogether. Okay. So that's kind of where we're at. But I am just telling everyone, continue. Right now is the best time. Do not wait, because once those rates start to tumble just a tiny bit, there's going to be 20 buyers for every home that comes on the market. So we're just status quo, keeping everyone coming in and keeping the applications, going, and encouraging people to prepare right now, even if they think they want to wait, but to just get prepared and be fully pre-approved up front. So,
yeah. Well, and potentially, there's different options, but, you're right. You run the risk of you might pay a little bit higher rate now, but you might get what you want if you can afford it versus
overpaying for a home. Yeah.
Exactly. So you alluded to this a little bit, and Amanda, maybe you want to weigh in, but based on previous experience with elections and all that, there is no crystal ball, but what do you kind of anticipate happening?
I guess probably kind of the same thing Lynn said, where we might see rates drop just a little bit right before the election, just because historically they have. But yeah, like you said, there's no crystal ball. And as we know, we really, if we could see the future, we would be rich.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd like to just mention is also with the impending election, they do have literally historically, if you can go back and look at several election years over the past, rates tend to come down. I mean, it's part of the political piece of all of this, but excuse me, they also will, I think that it'll be very different this fall from last fall. Last fall was a very slow time because rates continued to rise up just over 8% at one point. So this year, rates right now were, ranging between, 6.25%, 6.5% on average right now. What's going to happen is, I think, because rates are lower with this impending election, with the rates dropping, we're going to have a very busy fall.
So in terms of talking about first-time homebuyers and, some of them lacking the equity or most of them lacking equity to put toward a home purchase, what are some of the resources that you suggest, or what are some of the ways you guide these buyers?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I always recommend them talking to an experienced lender. And we're seeing more and more people use down payment assistance. We have the First Generation program, which has been really popular. And we have seen a lot of family gifts in people. I mean, they're just having to rely on that a little bit more because we're not seeing home prices come down. And rates are not ever probably going to be in that 2 to 3% range. I think people are finally accepting that and just saying rates are what they are, and I still need to buy a house. So I'm renting. I'm paying 100% interest right now versus buying and having an interest rate that might be a little higher than I wanted, but I'm still earning that equity. So I think for a lot of first-time home buyers, it is still in their heads that they want to have that investment, and that, it's the first step to building your wealth is real estate. So I think they are reaching out to family members, asking, for gifts to help them get to where they need to be to buy their first home.
Yep. And a lot of people, again, are really excited about that First Gen program. We have a lot of families that have come to us inquiring about it. I've closed several loans already, both through the nonprofit and through Minnesota Housing. First Generation program, that's a huge benefit to people. That's a big chunk of money that helps them make things a little bit more affordable. Being able to take either $32,000 or $35,000 either off, the sale price, or use it towards closing cost, down payment, or whatever, however they choose to want to have that, make it be most advantageous for them financially. We'll go over a couple different ways that they can take advantage of that money if they do qualify for that program. The one thing also that I really think that I do encourage most people that are wanting to purchase is talking to family members, because we're finding that a lot more people are going multi-generational now and living with family members. Parents are starting to retire. Let's buy a house big enough so that we can have them live in the basement. I've had multiple people come to me just this year alone talking about that with their future plans. And so I think that's also going to become very popular as the rate of return on real estate continues to rise. The cost of real estate is going to rise. Rates are probably not coming down. So just trying to educate.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like people are leaving their parents' home later as well, just kind of staying and maybe paying off debts and other things so that they can step out on their own more successfully.
Definitely.
I think the cost of going to college now is so much higher than it used to be. So student loan debt has really impacted the average age of a first-time home buyer.
Absolutely. Seen and heard that as well. So the market-wide median sales price rose. We talked about this earlier in the podcast, to $385,000. But new single-family homes are fetching upwards of $540,000, with existing condos more in a what you'd call, I guess, an affordable range at just over 200,000. And overall, sellers in July accepted offers at 99.5% of their list price on average. That said, listings that were between that $300,000 and $500,000 mark got offers at 100.1% of list price, while homes over $1 million were more at that 97.9% threshold. Amanda, I know you said personally you kind of saw a boom in July, a little bit on both the buyer and seller side, and I wonder if you would want to talk about that a little bit and just kind of the activity that you experienced.
Absolutely. I did. July usually for me is a little bit of a slower month. I think people get caught up in summer activities and family trips and, going to the cabin. And for some reason this July, I just saw a lot more activity. I had buyers calling one after another, which was great. And I think that, we had such a stall with an increasing the interest rates where everybody was just like not buying. We're going to wait for those rates to come down. And people did. People waited and waited and waited and waited. And they're just, I think there's this acceptance now. Okay, we waited all spring. We waited, half of the summer. And now we still need to buy a house. So we're not seeing those rates come down. I think we're just going to go ahead and do it, and just kind of realizing if they do come down, they can refinance, but they have to get into a house. So I think that was a big thing that we saw.
Do you think the impetus a little bit was we want to be somewhere before school starts or before the weather turns cold?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I think you kind of get to that realization that you don't want to move when it's 20 below. So
right.
people do kind of get that feeling. So I think, and I think with sellers too, I think we saw, I had more sellers calling wanting to sell their houses too. And I think that sellers have really been stuck with these golden handcuffs where they have these amazing interest rates and these low mortgage payments, and they want to move up, or their needs for their home have changed, but they can't really sell. They feel like they can't sell their house and move because they're instead of move up buyers, it's almost like moving horizontally where you're going to be getting less house for more money. And so I think a lot of people have just kind of waited on that too. But I think they're coming to the realization too, okay, we've waited. This could take years and my housing needs have changed. And so we are seeing them start to kind of have, as sellers, that same realization that the buyers are having, because the sellers are ultimately most likely going to be buyers too. So they're selling their home, but then they have to find a place to live. So I think they're kind of realizing, okay, well, we need more space. We're going to go ahead and buy. And then same thing, if interest rates come down, we'll refinance and deal with that. So yeah, so it's been a really busy summer, and into August right now, kind of the same thing.
Okay. So that mentality shift kind of you saw happen.
Yep.
I've also seen a lot with refinancing too, starting again, because what has happened is most people will call and say, oh, I've got all this debt, but I'm in this. So a lot of people asking about HELOCs, home equity lines of credit, because they don't want to touch their first mortgage rate, because they're in that 2.7 to 3.5 range. And again, as Amanda referred to them as the golden handcuffs, that's what I like to call them too. I go, oh, you're in the golden handcuffs. What happens is they want to stay in that rate, but they've acquired all this debt with credit card debt, and they're paying anywhere from 25 to 29% on their credit card. So their blended rate is very high. So I've actually had quite a few refinances in the last few months pop up too. Okay. They have stayed in, with inflation being so high over the last couple of years, the refinance piece of it has become very popular, but a lot of people are really wanting to just stay in that lower rate and then want to take out home equity lines of credit. But then that becomes a whole nother piece that having to educate, to talk to them about, the difference of amortized loan versus an interest-only loan, and telling them, you got to make sure that you're looking at this from a financial perspective, and then sometimes running that blended rate calculator that I have
Sure.
to explain to them on paper, like, this is where you're at, this is how long, if you stay in these credit cards, it could take you another 25 to 30 years with the balances that you're at right now. I had one person, I did this calculation on, it was 25 years before they'd get out of debt. Well, that's almost as high as a 30-year mortgage, and their blended rate was at 8.2%. And I'm like, well, to refinance, even doing a cash out refi with your credit score right now, we could actually get you lower than that. So you have to decide, do you want to carry the stress with the compounded interest over the next 25 years or stay in that low rate that you have? And we ended up ultimately doing a refi. So I think that's also on the cusp of change, just trying to educate people. But I think that's also held some people back too, because like you said, the higher price people that we have qualified right now are having no problem getting in and getting their offers accepted. It's anyone under that like 400, 425 range and below that they're still going into the multiple offers. So.
Well, yeah, and I think, the higher the home price, those buyers tend to be pretty more or less rate sensitive. Some of them, have the cash payments and other things. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really important, what you're talking about in that population. So, we talked about this a little bit, but what driving factors are you seeing for people choosing whether to sell or buy in today's market?
Good question. I think some of the driving factors are the normal ones: marriage, divorce, growing family, downsizing for empty nesters. So I think those will always be there. Job changes, geographical changes. Those will always be there. But I think we're also seeing a lot with market conditions and interest rates. So one big thing I see is rents going up. So just having rents be so at such an unaffordable level that a lot of renters are really kind of feeling that pinch to buy a home when they're comparing the cost of their rent to the cost of a mortgage. It's like, well, I'm paying this much for rent. I could own my own home for that. So
Sure.
Even with interest rates higher, even with home prices higher, it's still, kind of the case.
A little bit more of a win and start building that equity.
Right.
Well, what else? I mean, are there other things either of you want to touch on before we wrap this up?
No, I think the interest rate obviously has been playing a role. I mean, for us from the lending standpoint, we have really seen, the kind of rise and fall of it all just in the last few years, but still maintaining that. I like to educate people and let them know, like, hey, as long as we're all human, we all are going to need shelter. So you get to make that choice. Do you want to pay someone else's mortgage for them? Do you want to start building money and putting it back in your pocket? So really getting to the nitty gritty of what it is that drives their decisions and finding out, because a lot of this can be an emotional decision too for them. So you have to really be understanding and caring at the same time when you're talking to people, because it is such a sensitive subject. I do get people that will call and just ask questions, and they're like, well, we're probably going to wait for another year. And then I start talking about, well, that price point of that home for $300,000 with the rate of return being at, average in the Twin Cities about 6%, is going to cost you $320,000 in 6 months from now. So I'm just try to be educational to them and empathizing and understanding to them. I just really feel like people don't quite get it until you take the time to break it down for them.
Well, and then in breaking it down too, I mean, you're talking about the whole affordability puzzle of maintenance and groceries and just daily living. And,
Yes.
It's a big picture.
It is. It's a huge picture. And with inflation being the way that it's been, that's been a huge factor again. Spinning back to the fact that I'm seeing higher credit card debt than I've seen in probably the last 3 or 4 years, just real recently.
Okay.
So when I'm starting to build credit, I'm noticing a lot of credit card debt. And then we're talking about ways to consolidate or to get rid of that or to make things more affordable. I mean, people are having to borrow more from their 401ks to kind of get rid of that credit card debt, and they don't even realize they have that as an option where, the interest rate on a 401k, 7-8% is still better than a 25 to 29% credit card. So, and then when they pay off the debt, then we're able to then show them, hey, you just paid off $300 a month worth of payments, and now you can afford a little bit more. So that also just helps give them like that light bulb idea, like, oh, we really could be a buyer. So
Sure.
let's apply and move forward. So a lot of prep work and a lot of communication, kind of being a good listener and making sure that I'm sensitive to their needs has been really helpful. So.
Yeah. Well, and absolutely. I mean, how lucky are the clients to have you guys and so many other lenders and realtors in their court?
Yeah.
So, anything you want to add, Amanda?
Awesome. Well, I'm just excited to see, what happens this fall, moving out of our summer into fall. And I just love what I do. And I think that the biggest thing is just to stay adaptable. And I think the buyers and sellers are having to adapt to our changes in market. And as realtors and lenders, we're doing the same thing. And with that adaptation comes a lot of education.
Sure.
Us making sure that we're doing our research and educating ourselves so that we can properly educate our clients. And I think expectation is such a big part of the service piece of our jobs where, people come in with expectations that aren't what the current market conditions are. And so just letting them know, I think, just helps this process. Oh, okay, so this isn't just me. This is like, how it is. I think that just helps that whole system run so much smoother.
Sure, absolutely. Well, they're lucky to have you. Thank you both for being on. And I'll just kind of summarize really quick with for the month of July, for cities with at least 5 sales throughout the 16-county Twin Cities Metro that we focus on, the highest price areas were Wayzata, Independence, Orono, and North Oaks. And the most affordable areas in that 16-county area are Lauderdale, North St. Paul Park, and Oakdale. So thank you. It was great having you both.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Great to be here.